Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome one and all to this, the Cult Movie Podcast, Cult Potato. As always, I am your ever faithful host, and joining me is my eternal companion and a man who, back in high school, genuinely went around referring to himself as the Gradester and insisted everyone call him that. Mr. Grady Hooker, welcome to the show.
I kind of wanted to hang up on you immediately as soon as you said that.
Drudging up painful memories, am I?
Drudging up painful slander and lies. My lawyer will see you in court.
Oh, what are you talking about, Grady? I distinctly remember you. Oh, sorry. I'm sorry, Gradester. I specifically remember you going around having insisting everyone call you that.
It's okay, champion. How about you talk about Princess Bride?
Hey, from what I recall, the nickname that was forced upon me was Camp Dog, if I'm not mistaken. Get it right.
Yeah, but you didn't hate Camp Dog, you hated Champion.
Excuse me, I despised Camp Dog, I still do.
Alrighty, well then, Camp Dog, talk about Princess Bride.
Yes, so the film that we're going to be covering today is, of course, the classic, The Princess Bride, directed by Rob Reiner, distributed by 20th Century Fox. This is a very, very well-known film. It's on the border of cult classic because it is a genuinely beloved film, and it was very well... And it was very well received when it first came out, but it's just on the border there because it didn't do very well at the box office when it first came out due to poor marketing. So I think we can squeak it in there. I think we can squeak it in.
If I could squeeze in Assassination Nation, you can throw in this.
Yes. So, Grady, I believe that neither of us had actually watched this film prior to this podcast.
Yeah, it was completely and utterly different to what I expected, you know.
I want to know, what did you expect from the film?
I guess I just kind of expected, like, action-adventure, like, your generic hero goes on quest, gets girl, happily ever after, formulaic thing, and they took a few twists and turns. They didn't go from A to B. They went from A to D to F to Z and back down to B.
Yeah. That's surprising because I do feel like that is sort of what they were going for, like the classic, heroic journey, damsel in distress kind of thing. I don't. There are a couple things here and there, but I still feel like they're mostly stuck to that. I don't really see where you're getting all the twists and turns from.
We had some giants that turned good. We had a revenge plot off on the side. We had a Dread Pirate Legacy lore drop that I'm sure nobody cared about learning about Dread Pirates. We had the whole fake out with the farm boy leaving at the start. We had the Sicilian who we thought might be the villain, and then, the evil prince became the villain in the middle of it. Then it turned out the evil prince wanted to kill her the entire time to start war, which was exactly what the Sicilian wanted to do. And this war never happens, and we kind of never see the other side of the war. It just keeps getting mentioned. And then the guy gets the girl at the end. And live happily ever after.
So they did get there in the end, but it was just a bit more than what you were expecting.
Yeah, I expected a bit more paint by numbers, I guess.
Yeah. In fact, I believe you sent me a message, like, after you had watched it, that I'll read it. It was just like, that was ... weird.
Yeah, I don't know what I'd heard so much about this film.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it just didn't live up to expectations or didn't live up to what I thought people were describing. But just as I was watching it, I just was all over the place. It's probably the most notes I've taken during a film. Like, of just, what is happening here? What is this? Is that a man in a rat suit? I think about maybe 20 minutes into the movie, my girlfriend who also hadn't seen it, her exact quote was, she's gonna hate me for sharing this exact quote, "This is giving me Monty Python vibes, but it's not funny."
Oh, wow, that is a completely different reaction to what I had, because Actually, what I should get at is, did you enjoy the film?
I don't think I'd watch it again.
Hmm.
I didn't hate my time. I didn't think I wasted my time.
Yeah.
Like, by the time I'd already put an hour in, I was like, yeah, okay, I'm gonna watch the end of this movie. But no, I don't think I'd be showing this around to people and being like, hey, let's go watch The Princess Bride.
I mean, while I do kind of get where you're coming from, because, truth be told, in watching it, it was a bit goofier and a bit sillier than I was honestly expecting. But I guess that was something that I was more willing to roll with because of the whole framing device they use about how it's a children's story being told by like a grandfather to his grandson. So I was more willing to kind of take those sorts of things in stride, like the whole rodents of unusual size kind of thing. Like
Which was totes a man in a rat suit, right?
Yeah, well, yes, it was a very fake-looking rat. The eels looked nice, though. I thought the eels looked kind of cool, even though they do kind of come out of... The shrieking eels do kind of come out of nowhere, where it seems to be fairly grounded, and it's like, oh, giant man-eating eels just kind of come out of nowhere.
I've written comically large eel animatronic.
Yes.
It was
I
really
thought those looked kind of nice.
Yeah, I think goofy and campy are probably the two best ways to describe it.
Yeah, it's a bit camp, that I'll give you. Yeah. But whereas I really enjoy that kind of stuff, but I can see that if somebody else didn't enjoy it, then, it's obviously not going to be as fun of a time.
I think it was more my expectations were misaligned when I came into it.
I've got to ask, like, obviously you were expecting a bit more of a, paint by numbers kind of movie, but was there anything specifically that you were expecting that you were let down that, wasn't really there?
I guess at one point I thought, like, hey, maybe we're gonna have I guess a final boss fight, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
And we never really got it. Even when Montoya was getting his revenge, it was a pretty short fight, a couple stabs here and there, and then we move on from it. He was sort of the side plot to it all. Really, the one big fight and the highlight of the movie for me was the original fight with Montoya.
The one on the top of the cliffs?
Yeah, Wesley and Montoya having their little fight. Like, just the respect beforehand. Like, it was a little weird at the start where we're having, like, a heart-to-heart with this person we promised to murder. But then it just goes into a really good sword-fighting choreography. They used the environment really well, even though it's just, like, a random gymnastics bar placed on the geometry, but overall I really liked that fight scene. It was probably my favorite scene of the movie.
And what's probably more impressive is that the entire, with the exception of that little gymnastics routine that they did, the entire fight was performed by the actual actors, and they didn't use with the exception of the gymnastics thing, they didn't use stunt doubles at all. So yeah, so they really committed to like learning the routine and learning their sword play to make it look as good as it did.
Yeah, and I really liked that, and I guess in hindsight, looking back at it, that was kind of the big boss fight. Like, we didn't really get anything else after that. His fight with the giant was pretty lackluster. He had a battle of wits with the Sicilian instead. As I said, Montoya's fight was...
You gotta admit, though, the whole bit with the Vizzini, the Sicilian, you have to admit, that was still pretty clever. I still really like that.
Don't you... Hey, I just got an immunity to the poison. Don't you hit me with that. That's the weakest out ever. I just keep drinking the poison over and over and over and over until I can't die from it.
Again, children's storybook logic.
I'm gonna let you have it if this was a children's storybook. I know that's the framing device.
It is based on an actual story.
I guess. Was this marketed towards adults? Was this marketed towards children?
Yeah, it was marketed as a family film.
Then I'm gonna let it get off with some more stuff.
Actually, hang on, let me just quickly double check. I'm pretty sure that...
Rated M for ultra violence.
Yeah. It was marketed towards families.
Okay. Then it can have a little bit more slack. Not a lot, just a little bit more slack.
If I do get what you're meaning, because whilst I did enjoy it, for the sheer legacy that this movie has, you do kind of expect it to have a bit more. It's kind of like what's a good example? It's kind of like it's because it's something that's been built up so much over time, especially since there's just so many, quotes that are taken from the dialogue of this movie, and there's actually quite a few, modern memes that have been taken from this as well, like the whole, I don't think that word means what you think it means, and stuff like that. I think for something like that, you do kind of expect it to be just a lot of it. I guess it is just kind of hype backlash, like it just gets built up so much in your mind that it can never really live up to it. Especially since, whilst I feel like this film would be good watching it in a vacuum, but I suppose it would be a bit of a letdown after all that build-up.
I do have one note that just says, so many shit quotes. Which I think is alluding to what you're saying there. Like, people will quote this movie all the time. Look, I'm just going to point out some of the goofy stuff that I've written down notes of, and feel free to stop me at any point. First off, that farm boy was totally a simp the entire way through that opening sequence. I'm not letting that pass.
Okay, again, 80% of the heroes in these old fairy tales are usually like that. Like, dude, Rapunzel, that's literally... he could just go somewhere else, but no, he has to climb the big tower. Sleeping Beauty, he has to fight through, the thorns and the dragon. That's just how a lot of these old fairy tale type stories go.
The entire way through the Dread Pirate segment, you could clearly tell that it was Wesley.
Like, it boggles the mind as to how she was not able to figure out it was him.
And now I'm just going to point towards one specific scene. Alright, we've just killed the Sicilian. Just before we unmask the Dread Pirate, he falls down a cliff and rolls in the most comical way, and she goes yeet and jumps after him and just starts rolling down the hill like a cheese wheel.
Okay, yeah, I'll give that to you. That was baffling. That was bafflingly goofy. I couldn't... It did kind of stun me, and I actually did rewind it just to watch it again. It's like, did I watch... Because I was kind of half paying attention to the movie. I was doing something else at the time. Kind of rewound it, watched it back. It's like, no, that is genuinely goofy. I don't really know what's going on here.
And then I got another quote from one of my girlfriends. That was the shittiest reveal. He just rolled down a hill and it fell off. Why didn't he reveal himself earlier? There was no reason not to.
I knew it was coming, but it was it just kind of happened with no real pomp or circumstance.
It was just like that whole rolling scene. If you could just cut that 5 minutes out.
That was such a goofy and cheesy sequence. I will defend many things of this movie, but that I will not defend. You are 100% correct there.
That's good. The rat, I can't get over the fact that it was clearly a man in a rat suit.
Yeah, you got me there. It was a pretty crappy rat costume. To be fair, this was just under a decade shy of Jurassic Park, so cut it some... It's 87, dude. Cut it some slack.
Sure.
Yes, I know Star Wars came out a decade earlier, but still.
It wasn't pretty. I just have one note that just says, the Count and the Prince were totes gay. That's all on that one.
Yeah.
I just need that noted.
Yeah, that's yeah, now that you say that, I suppose that's I didn't think of it before, but now that you've said it out loud, yeah, I guess you're kind of right there.
Look, there was a few times that clearly made me write down that note. Like, there was some eyes flicking back and forth between those two, at least from the Count. Maybe the Prince was a little unawares, but the Count knew what he was doing. And just to put on top of the Count's kinky sex life, he goes downstairs into his little secret dungeon with an albino and has a nipple torture machine.
With the suction cups.
That suction cups to your nipples and just yanks really hard and sucks the life out of you. I didn't know my life force was stored in my nipples. I will take more care of them now.
I don't know what was up with that machine. I was expecting it to be like a medieval torture rack or something. And then when the water started coming in, like, whoa, are we gonna have Chinese water torture? Are we gonna have, like, waterboarding in a kid's movie? But no, it was... I want to say it was magic, but there's obviously no magic in this movie, so I don't quite know what to make of it.
It was a nipple torture machine.
It was a nipple torturing machine. Yes.
And it killed him.
And it killed him. It tortured his nipples so hard that he died. And then he came back, sort of.
Kinda, maybe, a little bit. I think at about that point that I wrote down, there is no good people in this film. I don't think anybody here is good.
The granddad? And the kid?
Nobody in the story is a good character. I couldn't look at any of them and be like, yeah, you're doing good. We'll let you through.
Oh, but, okay, Inigo Montoya and
the Giant.
Can't remember Andre the Giant's character's name, so I'm just going to call him Andre the... Fezzik, thank you, but let's be real, I'm just going to call him Andre the Giant. Like, You look at him, it's like, no, that's just Andre. They're guys who've fallen on hard times, sure, they're bad guys, but they do a lot of good as well, they're good people. They're just, they're going through a rough patch, and they come out good in the end.
No, they don't. Montoya goes and becomes the next Dread Pirate. Nobody's good. Maybe the Giant. Maybe. And even then, he, threw rocks and tried to kill Wesley and is working with the Sicilian, so... he wanted to start war. Or he didn't want to, but he was going to.
He didn't know that was going to happen. Or did he? Wait, I'm remembering just thinking... He's a good person, okay? It's a children's story. And a lot of characters in children's stories tend to be pretty awful. Jack and the Beanstalk is about a guy who does a B&E, murders the occupant, and then just robs him, alright? That's how these old stories tend to... That's how children's stories tend to go.
You're not wrong, but I'm not going to give it an excuse for that. Okay, you've defended a lot of things about this movie. Okay, I'm gonna need you to defend one more.
Yeah.
The Miracle Max scene.
Oh, I hated that scene. I thought the whole falling down the hill scene was goofy and silly. At least I could get some sort of enjoyment out of it because of how dumb it was. The Miracle Max scene really annoyed me.
I feel like I've hit on most of the major scenes of this movie and you've gone, yeah, that actually wasn't that great.
No, you've missed out a few. But no, let's just get the most let's get a guy and just have him portray the most stereotypically Jewish person in existence. In medieval fantasy Europe.
You're not wrong. And he brings our character back to life without the usage of weirdo magic. He's just performing miracles.
Yeah.
It was rough, that whole scene.
I mean, I like Billy Crystal, but come on, dude.
Yeah, that's pretty much what it is, right? Like, I don't know if he knew what he was signing up to. To be fair, the albino was pretty bad as well. I kind
of like the albino, if I'm being honest.
I gotta sit here and be like, it was the 80s. And you can still only cut some stuff slack.
It was just funny watching it. It's just like, yep, there, watching the scene with Miracle Max. It's like, yep, there goes Emmy Award-winning beloved actor Billy Crystal. Yep. Just doing his best Jewish impression. Thanks, dude.
Yep. I've only got one last note in this rambling of notes here of what I went really bad. Wesley, when he's in the bed, and he could say anything to reintroduce himself to our main character, the Princess Bride here. And what does he do? He says the fanciest form of nice tits. That's all he says.
Okay, to be fair, he says that to stop her from killing herself.
Oh, that's my favorite way to stop someone from committing suicide.
Yes, by saying,
Hey babe, you got nice tits.
Don't try not to damage the merchandise, alright?
Look,
okay,
that
yes,
would not pass this year.
When you re-examine that line, yes, it sounds really sleazy.
He's sleazy the entire way through as the Dread Pirate. Like,
The way
Wesley
I-
the
okay.
farm boy was a simp, and then he turned into like a nice guy at the end.
Okay, but the way I view it is that, you know, this is the love of his life. He went out to try and get his fortune. Then he spends 5 years on just a boat, right? And then he just comes back and he's just... And both of them, you saying it's just him, she gets some of it as well, Grady. Let's not pretend that this is a one-way thing. They're both just super horny. Just unbearably horny.
She'd throw herself down a cliff for him. It's a kids' film, Campion. We can't talk about that.
Again, a lot of kids' films from the 80s were super horny. Grady, didn't we review Labyrinth a few weeks ago?
Yeah. Yeah. Look,
Kids' films from the 80s were really horny, okay?
you know what's not horny?
What?
The clergyman in the wedding.
I actually liked him. I thought he was funny, alright?
Okay. You gonna defend that one?
You know, in the credits, he's actually listed as the impressive clergyman.
I sat through the credits. For each of these films that we've reviewed, I typically try to sit down through the credits just to see if I recognize names or anything, especially the older films. Yeah. And so yeah, I sat through it, and there's a lot of people are just credited as things like that, right? Like the impressive clergyman, the albino, the queen, the ancient Boer. Like, everybody's got pretty simplistic titles.
I love the ancient Boer. She was great.
She did her
She just
role
stood
amazing.
up, and she doesn't boo. She doesn't go. Ugh. She stands up. She just says, boo, boo. And from what I recall, she doesn't even get punished by the king for just like calling him out to his face. I thought that was pretty great.
Yeah, I think if it wasn't like a dream sequence, it would have nailed it. But there we go. I take it back. There is a good person in this film, and it is the ancient Boer. Best person in this film. I can't. Everything else, everyone else is a horrible human being. The ancient Boer, perfect.
Okay.
But this is what everything I hated about the film, I guess. What did you like about the film?
Well, while we're on the topic of discussing the cast, I think that the cast for this film is actually pretty fantastic. Like, dude, of course you have, Andre the Giant. My personal favorite, Wallace Shawn as Vizzini, the Sicilian. Come on, dude, you gotta love Wallace Shawn. He's always fantastic.
I got a problem with Wallace Shawn.
You got a problem with Wallace Shawn? Really?
The whole time throughout this film, every time the Sicilian was talking, all that I had in my head was, man, that T-Rex is angry.
Oh, you're right. How dare he be such a prolific and well-recognizable actor? The nerve.
That one voice he does.
That's his voice, Grady. That's just the way he talks.
Look, just the entire time, all I could think about was Rex. I'm not saying it was a negative, it was just hilarious to me. Every time he spoke, I just could imagine the little green T-Rex toy just being angry.
That actually sounds like it'd be pretty great to me.
Where's our Rex spin-off? We need a Rex spin-off.
I think he got an animated short. I don't think it'd do a feature-length one, but I'm pretty sure he got like a short.
That sounds like something they do. But you're sitting here and you're talking about the cast. I will point out the cast is like 12 people. It's not the biggest cast.
Before we move on, sorry, I'm just on Wallace Shawn's Wikipedia page.
Oh, of course you are.
Did you know that they actually got Wallace Shawn to reprise his role as Rex in the Kingdom Hearts games?
That's good. I hope most of the characters got to come back, or like the voice actors for those characters got to come back.
Well, for some of them, for Pirates of the Caribbean, they're not getting Johnny Depp and Orlando Bloom for Kingdom Hearts.
Why not?
They don't have that kind of money, Grady. I know it's Square Enix and Disney money, but they're not gonna shell out for Johnny Depp in a Kingdom Hearts game.
They could do it.
Hey, dude, they got James Woods as Hades, alright? That's the furthest they're willing to go.
Fair. Do you have anything else about the cast as well for Princess Bride?
Okay, and I also gotta say that, I'm trying to get his last name right. Mandy Patinkin, the guy who plays Inigo Montoya.
Mm-hmm.
You have to love Inigo, dude. He's the best character in the whole film. Come on.
Sure. He has a character arc. He starts and completes his character arc.
And he has some of the most quotable lines in all of cinema.
That's just because he says it over and over and over and over and over.
He has other lines. Like, of course, there's the famous, "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die." Which is something that I heard quoted long before I ever saw this. There's, you keep using that word. That's a pretty great one. Let's fight like gentlemen. I am not left-handed. Those sorts of things.
Yeah.
Actually, does he say let's fight like gentlemen, or is that someone else?
It's either him or Wesley. It's in that fight at the start. Yeah, I will give you that Montoya is the best character of the set. But he doesn't have a lot of competition.
So I think that actually might be Andre the Giant. I think he actually might be the one who says it.
How could you forget that thick French accent? Andre is... I got a lot of stuff about Andre, but I'm not sure if we're entering the Andre section of this episode yet.
Yeah, okay, it was Fezzik. He is the one who says it. The second best character of the movie. The two best characters. Movie probably should have been about them, but, whatever.
Are we in the Andre the Giant section of this episode?
We may as well. Like, we're talking about the cast, so, we can kind of sidelong into talking about Andre.
It's kind of sad. Like, I don't know how many years Andre was around after this.
Not very long.
Movie came out, but I do remember this being the tail end of Andre. From my
I think he did like one film after this. A film called Trading Mom. Sorry.
Yeah, I've watched a couple documentaries around Andre's life, because the man is a legend. A myth, even, at some points. Some of the stuff that they say he does, like slamming 48 beers and not being drunk kind of deal. And he was pretty unwell at this point of The Princess Bride, and so I would have...
due to his gigantism.
I would have loved to, I guess, appreciate his portrayal a little bit more, but because I'd seen all of those docos, like, all I could think about was, like, the massive amount of pain he must have been in.
Yeah.
Like, in the big scene at the end where the Princess Bride jumps out the window and, like, lands in his arms, like, he couldn't hold Robin.
Yeah, they need... I didn't watch a documentary, but I've seen a few, like, YouTube videos on it about how apparently she needed to be in a harness because he was physically incapable of lifting her at that point in his life.
Yeah, and you could see where they switched him out to, like, a double to do pretty much any of the physical stuff. Yeah. The takedowns were all just, like, him bonking someone in the head or throwing a rock from off-screen. He was really doing not well.
No. Although, if it makes you feel any better, from what I've heard, apparently he despite all that pain, he did really love his time on set, and he had a really... And the cast, everyone absolutely loved working with him. He was really great on set, and he had a lot of fun doing this. So, at the very least, even though he was having in a lot of pain, he had a really fun time, which I think is probably the important thing to take away from this.
And definitely, as you say, sort of ranks in at that number 2 sort of character spot. Between after Montoya, obviously.
Yeah, and it's important because, like, this is probably... Okay, if obviously discounting all his wrestling stuff, but this is definitely an iconic role for him. Like, when people think of The Princess Bride, he's one of the things that immediately comes to mind, if not the most, thing at the forefront.
Yeah, I definitely think it was Andre the Giant in the mainstream for sure.
Yeah. And I'm just seeing because I think...
Campion is furiously Googling.
One more like scrolling up and down his Wikipedia page. He still had a few years after this came out, actually. This came out in 87 and he passed away at around 94, 93.
Okay.
So he still had a few good years left in him.
He might have had a couple surgeries after this, I think, that extended him out a little bit.
Yeah. Hey, gigantism, it really does a number on you.
Yeah.
There's a reason why people have to stop growing.
And Andre decided to spend his time entertaining us, so appreciate that.
And while we're on the topic of talking about Andre, I did genuinely love the way that he sort of played his character in this film. Because there is a genuine kind of like warmth and intelligence behind his character, which is something, especially, at the time period, you wouldn't really get for characters who were supposed to be like big brutes.
Yeah.
And even though his character was written that way, it does come off as pretty genuine in the way he portrays it. So even though, again, he was in quite a bit of pain, but he did manage to pull off the role quite well, I think.
I think the best thing the director did was just let Andre be Andre.
Yeah.
And as much as that character was called Fezzik, it really, from my understanding of Andre as a human being, it was just Andre being Andre.
Yeah, which, works really well to the kind of character they were trying to play here. And I think that's kind of why whenever people look at it, they don't know him as Fezzik, they know him as Andre. Like for Inigo Montoya, people don't remember, it's Mandy. People don't really say that. They say, no, it's Inigo Montoya. For Wallace Shawn, yes, the people usually do say, yeah, it's just Wallace Shawn. How could you not? But yes. But for Andre, it's like, no, that's just Andre the Giant right there.
Yeah.
And unlike most of our podcasts, we were able. This wasn't just us shoehorning in a pointless wrestling discussion. It was actually relevant this time, Grady.
Only wrestling-based films from here on out. Films that featured wrestlers.
Ready to rumble next week. Let's go.
There's heaps of them that we could shoehorn in there if we really wanted to.
Hulk Hogan's got a whole filmography, dude.
Three Ninjas 4. High Noon at Mega Mountain. I've been suggesting it.
Was Suburban Commando the other one he did, or was that someone else?
I'm not 100% sure.
Hang on, I'm bringing this to a grinding halt whilst I Google Hulk Hogan's filmography. Hang on.
That's fair. I'll point out this is the second time I've been able to mention Three Ninjas on these podcasts. The first one was on our very first episode.
Yes.
With the sand dune worms, and
this is a prelude to our upcoming Three Ninjas podcast.
It's not on the schedule, but we'll get to it.
We'll get to it. I mean, it's not going to stop. I don't want to know about his video games or filmography. Here we go. I did not know he was... Oh, that's right. He was in Gremlins. I remember Gremlins 2.
Yeah, Gremlins 2.
Movie.
Watch the Key and Peele sketch if you haven't.
I did not know he was in Romeo and Juliet. That is... Oh, man.
I didn't need to know that. I could have gone my whole life not knowing that.
I forgot that Romeo and Juliet existed. That's fantastic. He was in Muppets in Space. Santa with Muscles. Oh, how could I forget that? How could we forget Santa with Muscles?
Can we get back to The Princess Bride?
He did do Suburban Commando and Mr. Nanny. Mr. Nanny was the other one I was thinking of.
Yeah. I don't know how to transition us back. It's on you, bud. You got us off this train track.
Wow, he started boarding at an early age, didn't he?
I'm gonna just let Campion ramble about Hulk Hogan here for a little while. How's everybody else going? You guys enjoying your days?
As a fun fact, Alex from Street Fighter 3 is based on Hulk Hogan, and Hugo is based on Andre the Giant. So there you go.
That's our segue back?
For the 5 people out there, yes. Anyway, I really enjoyed this film. You obviously enjoyed it. Less so.
I didn't hate it. I would give it a nice middle of the road 4 or 5 out of 10. Like, we're not doing numbers on the show, but like, it's middle of the road.
I'd give it more like a 6, more like a 7. 6.5 or a 7 is what I would probably aim it at.
Look, if there was less misogynistic quotes from Wesley, maybe I'd bank them back up. That wasn't the only one for the record.
Yeah, I know. I was trying to avoid that.
There's him threatening to slap her if she shares her opinion one more time. There's like, again, where I'm from, we don't listen to women.
It was the 80s, Grady. It was the 80s.
For a film that is heralded so much, the mighty have fallen.
To be fair, that happens a lot in old films. Like, oh wait, what was it? Is it It's a Wonderful Life? Or I think It's a Wonderful Life. It's a Wonderful Life. I'm pretty sure. Yeah. Do you know It's a Wonderful Life?
I do not.
Okay. It's either It's a Wonderful Life or one of those other like old, like really popular Christmas movies. I think It's a Wonderful Life is one of those things that's really popular in the States, but not so much over here.
Mm-hmm.
For listeners, we live in New Zealand, so you wanna come to a cultural backwater, come to New Zealand,
or don't,
or don't. Yeah, go somewhere else. You'll have a lot more fun. But it's a it's like this. Oh, it's definitely like this classic Christmas film that everyone loves, and it has this ridiculously like racist short musical number with like the most okay, it was made in like the 40s, right? Imagine like a 40s racist stereotype of what a Chinese person would be.
Fair. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, now imagine that as as like a short musical bit.
Yep. Products of their time.
Products of their time, yes. Although even then, like, this was 87. I like, back to Princess Bride, I wasn't expecting that kind of stuff from 87. It's just, that's all I'm saying.
Yeah, 87 is only, 30 years ago? 35 years? That's not that long ago.
I just spent all the time slagging off It's a Wonderful Life, and I'm desperately trying to see if that actually is in the movie, and now I'm afraid that I actually might be wrong.
You're trying to fact check if you slagged off the wrong movie or not?
Yeah, I may have either slagged off the wrong movie, or I may have just made up this unbelievably racist anecdote about that doesn't even exist.
That one's a lot worse for you.
Yeah.
So, while you keep fact checking that, I guess, Princess Bride, I guess for the cultural references, if you want to understand everything, it's worth watching through once. Just so you get, obviously, all the quotes and you get the context. Like, again, my girlfriend knew the Montoya quote perfectly. Didn't know where it was from or had, like, never seen it said by Montoya. It was just the quote that she could throw around. And you get to see a good performance by Andre. Maybe just fast forward the Miracle Max scene. You get to see some people comically falling down a hill. If you want goofy, campy, maybe show your children and then explain that the misogynism isn't cool anymore. And never was cool.
It was acceptable, not cool.
87.
Acceptable for the time.
87. And yeah. It is what it is. It's what it says on the box. Maybe I should have read the box before I watched the movie. Don't go into it hyped up. Don't think it's going to be some all-time classic, like, best film you should ever see. On IMDb here, just because I've got the cast list open, users can put movies onto a list, and, like, that list is public. One of the lists this movie is on is just called OK Movies. And I feel like it deserves its place on that list. Just an okay movie.
Yeah, true. However, I would also like to say that on the American Film Institute's 100 Greatest Love Stories, it comes in at number 88.
That's not high ranking.
On the 100 Greatest Romance Films, though?
I guess. I'm pretty sure it had like an Oscar
number
nom.
50 on Bravo's Funniest Movies.
It was nominated for Best Music.
Yes, and also it's on the it's because the version I watched, I think it was like the Criterion Collection version, and I think like the American National Film Registry inducted it into its archives, which is reserved for like the most like culturally important movies ever made. So
Look, I got one more fact before Campion can go into like how much money it made and all of those sort of statistics about it that I feel like you need to know.
Wait, no, sorry, you go. What am I doing? I'll shut up.
The American Comedy Awards nominated Billy Crystal for Funniest Supporting Male Performer. That's all.
It was a different time, Grady.
That's all I gotta say.
It could just be a generational thing. Like, there's a lot of things, like funny things from yesteryear that our generation just doesn't find funny. Like, have you ever sat down and tried to watch Seinfeld?
I have not, no.
The thing is that so many other sitcoms and stuff have copied Seinfeld so much that a lot of the stuff in that show just comes off as really passé and unfunny. So it's actually really difficult to laugh at Seinfeld nowadays. Same with early Simpsons. Well, some early Simpsons. Some of it's still gold, but depends. And before we move on to the actual statistics of the film, I would just like to say, it was not It's a Wonderful Life that did the racist Chinese scene. It's A Christmas Story. It exists. I didn't make it up. I just got the movie wrong. And
That's
also
the better one.
And it's from a movie from like the 70s or something, or the 80s, and not the 40s, which is really disappointing to me.
Mm-hmm.
And quickly double check what year Christmas Story was. 1983. I would expect something much better of a film. I thought it came out. That's why I thought it came out 40 years earlier. I just expected something like that from the 40s, but no.
That's a solid yikes.
It's a Wonderful Life managed to go the whole film without being racist, but 40 years later.
That's a yikes.
I'll actually send you the clip. It's I'm not. It sounds like I'm exaggerating, but it's really bad. It's really bad. I'll send you the clip.
I will not be editing that clip into this episode.
Grady, please edit that clip into this episode.
No.
Surely it's just because you're worried about copyright. I assume that's the only problem that you have with this.
Definitely, copyright is the only problem. I don't want to get the video taken down or anything.
Yes, exactly. Anyway, you ready for some statistics?
It's stats time, baby. I bet you we didn't have the stats ready.
I did. I closed the tab on accident. Vamp. Okay, I assume you'll just edit this bit out. Okay,
no, I'm not editing that out. That's staying in. Do your stats.
Okay, so as I alluded to earlier on in the show, the film, it did okay on release. As far as I can tell, it managed to make its budget back. Budget of 16 million, box office of 30 million, which I know sounds good because it's like, oh, that's nearly double its budget. But then once you have to include things like advertising, and there's a whole bunch of other stuff that isn't included into the budget. So generally, you want to. There's no hard and fast rule, but something that I read ages ago said that if you want to figure out if a film breaks even, you take its budget and then you double it so that you can do like so you can take all the marketing stuff out of the equation. But at the very least, this film, it broke even. Probably. We can say that, right? Probably broke even.
Wikipedia quote says, modest success.
Yes, modest. So it wasn't amazing, but, at the very least, it wasn't that terrible. As we said before, this film did really well with critics. They absolutely adored it critically. Apparently, it currently holds like a 98% approval rating on Rotten Tomatoes, which is
it's a big number.
Yeah.
Certified fresh.
Certified fresh, yes. But then, of course, as it usually goes with these sorts of things, once it made it onto home video, it managed to really, really well. And then it's had a number of re-releases over the years. And recently, during the COVID-19 pandemic, which, as of this recording, still going on, fun times all around, they did like it was sort of like a fan-made recreation of the film. I think it's called Home Movie The Princess Bride, where they got a bunch of people, including a lot of celebrities, to kind of film themselves at home reenacting various scenes from the movie. I think also the original cast came back and did like a well, the people who are still alive, quite a few of them are dead now. They did like a reading of the script, and I think they also read like an early version of the script as well, just to show all the stuff that got cut out of the movie.
Mm-hmm.
So it's got a bit of a legacy, and I know there are as with these kinds of things, there are talks to make to either remake it or give it a sequel, and this really, really doesn't seem like the kind of thing that should be remade. It's fine as it is.
Let it live on its legacy.
Yes. Although because some of the returning, when they did the read-through, the cast read-through, quite a few of the cast members had passed away. Some of the people that they got back, they brought in Whoopi Goldberg as the ancient Boer.
It's an important role.
The fantastic casting. Eric Idle of Monty Python fame, bringing it back in as the impressive clergyman.
Yeah. And they also kind of renamed the albino as well to the man with albinism. A little bit more PC of a title for the guy.
A little bit more. Apparently it also got a video game. Sorry, I'm just on the Wikipedia article now. Huh. That's odd. I think it also got like a role play or like a tabletop RPG, a la D&D. And I don't really know how that would happen, but good on them, I guess.
And I guess to roll it all together, I'm not playing that board game. Final thoughts? Anything before we move on to the next week's movie? Or next episode's movie?
Overall, I'd say I had definitely had a much more positive impression of this movie than you did. But then again, these sorts of movies, where they're like they're a bit cheese. I can't believe I forgot to mention this. Sorry, we're about to wrap it up and I haven't mentioned this yet. The grandson, played by Fred Savage, and the granddad is played by Peter Falk. Columbo. He's literally played by Columbo. I can't believe I didn't bring that up.
Gotta love Campion trying to shoehorn in more stories about the goddamn actors and actresses in these films.
I like Columbo. I just can't believe. I was thinking about that as before we were going on. Like, I got to talk about this. Got to mention because I love Columbo. Got to mention this, and I didn't bring it up until like the very end. So there you go. Yeah. So anyway, I love this movie. Well, loved is probably a strong word, but I quite liked it. I would watch it again.
And I would not, but a movie that I would watch again is the film that we're going to look at in the next episode, one that we've both already seen. Yes,
because for whatever reason, we've decided on the pattern of film I've seen, film you have seen, film neither of us have seen, and film both of us have seen. So, yeah, that's just what we've decided for whatever reason.
Look, don't complain, because it means we get to watch Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Yes, Gene Wilder's finest hour. Cannot wait. I absolutely adored that movie as a child. Have not seen it in nearly 20 years. I pray it still holds up.
Oh, I'm sure it's about to be ruined.
It's going to be ruined, except for the tunnel scene. That was always terrifying.
And look forward to talking about that on the next episode.
Yes, on the next episode. So, as always, thank you everyone for joining us today here at Cult Potato. As always, I am Campion, joined by my co-host Grady. This has been the Lexicon of Lore, and we hope to see you all next.